Welcome back to step 2 of 7 steps to sell for more. This is our video series of how to sell your home for more. Mike and Rob here from Coldwell Banker. So this next step is, we're calling it priorities. So when you're selling a house, you'd be, I guess, a little bit surprised that sometimes it really is not all about price. I had a client who was selling her multifamilies, 2 of them. And after a couple of weeks of being on the market with the second one, she just got to the point where she's like, you know what? At this point, I care so much more about the terms than the price. She's like, if I get a lower offer that's clean with less contingencies, less this and that, and nitpicking things, she was like, I'll be happy. It's not all about the money. So, Rob, I'd love to hear your take on this priorities and sort of the whole topic of it.
Well, Mike, I think you're absolutely correct. And when you're sitting down with these clients, any client, you really need to find out what is important to them. I mean, sometimes
everybody's got different drivers.
Exactly. And sometimes, like I, for example, had a client in the past that wanted to sell her home, but had built up so much clutter over the years. She literally needed close to 90 days to get out. Wow. And I remember her just summarily going through all the things in her home. Yeah. And so one of the priorities was a rent back.
Oh, okay. And, quickly, for anybody who doesn't maybe know what a rent back is, what is that?
So what a rent back is, essentially, is you've sold the home is closed, okay? So now the buyer owns the house, but the seller is given a specific amount of time, sometimes 30, 60, or 90 days, to stay in the home, either, and depending on how competitive the market is, and by the way, this particular one that I was talking about actually got a 90-day free rent back.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
So, again, that's part of the terms in negotiating. Yeah. And so you could either pay, a certain amount. In fact, when we bought a house one time, there were some things that came up from jobs and everything else, and we wanted to close before the seller could get out. Yeah. So we literally set up a rent back and rented them back, the house for a couple $100 a month. So that essentially it allows the seller to stay in past the closing date. And there's usually some paperwork for that and everything else, but it's not difficult, and obviously we can help out with that. Yeah. And then, but there's other things as well, just overall terms. Yeah, I mean, anytime you're looking at deals, especially you have competitive offers, an all cash deal is much easier and much quicker to move forward than a deal that has financing. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a deal a couple years ago where one deal was a finance deal with a rate cap. What a rate cap is, for example, right now the rates are at 6.5. Who knows what they'll be years from now? Somebody's watching this, but right now they're at 6.5. So an individual comes in and goes, okay, we're willing to buy this house, but if the rate goes over 7%, we're out. That's what a rate cap is. Yeah, yeah. And then you have another buyer who's like, I'm willing to pay all cash, 10-day close. Yeah. And all of a sudden, that guy could be $10,000 or $15,000 less, or that woman for that matter, that individual can be $10,000 or $15,000 less. And all of a sudden that $10,000 or $15,000 doesn't really matter as much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, when this happened, I told my client, she asked me, she said, well, what do you think the percentage of closing is? I said, frankly, you never know. But given the circumstances around it, I'd say you got an 80% chance of this closing with the financing. She goes, what about the one that's all cash? I'm like, that's about 99.9.
Yeah, it's true.
So the long and the short of it here is terms can be really important. Yeah. The other thing, and then there's other terms that some people might not even really have thought of. Yeah. For example, so let's say we're here in Providence and you go into College Hill. Now you have all these old homes in College Hill, Wayland Square, Blackstone area, and they're 100, 150 years old. So you have 2 clients, one that's willing to pay you $2 million, but he's going to level the house, and another family that's going to come in and they're going to pay 1.8, but they want to live in it. again, it's not up to you, it's up to the client, but you might have a client who appreciates the home. Their kids grew up in it.
And just the thought of them knowing.
And just the thought of that home being completely bulldozed does not, and again, ultimately it's the seller's option, what they want to do.
You'd be surprised sometimes, I think, not how little the money matters, but how much more the terms matter. For example, with multifamilies, like this client I was speaking about, offers that would come in that were contingent upon the fact of her, basically evicting all her tenants. And that's just, could be a hard thing for the seller to do, most times is. But B, if they've built relationships with their tenants, that's just extremely emotionally tough. Whereas if somebody else came in, maybe $20,000 lower, and said, just keep all the tenants in, I don't care. I mean, how much is, at that point, how much is that worth? Exactly. Are you willing to take that 20 grand loss just to, maybe be at peace in your mind and say, my tenants are going to be okay. I've known these people for 20 years. I'm going to be much happier with 20 grand less and knowing that they still have a place to live.
Exactly.
Rather than me having to personally say, hey, get the heck out.
Yeah, absolutely. So. One of the things that's critical, and we'll talk about this more in the third video, is inspections. And there's some states, California, Rhode Island, where you can do pre-inspections, and those can be accepted, and all of a sudden, you can get a cash offer, and it can be really clean. And then even in Massachusetts, even though it's not going to work quite as clean, at least they're going to have a little peace of mind and an idea, what is on the inspection before they actually get the buyer's inspections, which, as we know, are now required in Massachusetts.
And there'll be just so much less fear going into it. If you can provide a report that just says, hey, we've already had the property looked at, here's the report.
Exactly.
You break down a wall that people, oh wow, okay, I'm already prepared of what I'm gonna see. I'm not afraid of, the roof was bad or the roof was 5 years old or 10 years old and I'm worried about it. There's so much less fear going into a deal for a buyer, and you just help give them a lot of peace of mind. So.
Well, and the other thing, and again, we can get into the video 3, the third video, but there is a lot of really cool things with pre-inspections. And again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's good info. We'll definitely pick that up in the next video.
For sure.
Cool.
Thanks for watching the second installment of 7 Steps to Sell for More. Stay tuned for the rest of them. As you have questions, if you're considering selling, just want to pick our brains, we're always happy to talk, so feel free to reach out.